Again, I'll call to order the regular board meeting of the Morton Grove Library Board of Trustees on March 8th at just about 7 o'clock. So we can call, stand and do the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Callahan.
Right here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Gray. Here. Mason Jack here. Monzone.
Here.
Novik.
Here.
Pelletier. Here. Approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting from February 8th. Can I get a motion? There we go.
Board minutes from the regular meeting on February 8th.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
Just a question.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of things that we tabled, and I wanted to make sure that they all get on the agenda somewhere.
Pam?
The only thing that I'm aware of that was tabled was the setting of the date of an annual long-range planning meeting.
Okay, there was a.
I think maybe Barb
Did you have other
not so much
questions?
tabled,
Yeah,
but
no.
like there were some questions.
Okay,
Yeah,
the other one that I
questions.
was aware of was, what the donations,
That was the first one.
what made up the donations.
And then I think we were interested in the job description for the.
Yeah, the job description has not been completed.
Okay,
So that's where I'm at with that. So
Okay.
that is, since that is a brand new position, that's
Okay.
something that I'm working on.
Okay.
It's not yet finished. Of course, it would go before the board.
okay,
I'll bring them up as we get to the topic,
okay.
Okay,
okay?
sure.
I don't know if on the agenda though, is anything
Is that- I think
specific
we-
regarding the donations, or do we wanna have
Well,
her tell us?
That would be under financial.
Okay. you can
Okay.
wait till that.
I have a very broad mind today.
Okay. Anything else then? Okay.
You wanna approve that?
So you have a motion on the table.
Yeah, the $600 get explained.
Well,
No, you said you were
I
gonna.
thought you wanted to, when we
Oh.
talked about the finance report. I'm
That's
sorry, I
fine.
misunderstood.
That's the finance report, okay.
We can do it now.
Is that what we're doing, the finance report right now?
No, we're
No,
still
we're still on
approving
minutes.
minutes.
We're still approving
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I've had a bad week,
Okay,
to put it mildly.
that's okay.
For the minutes, so Gonzalez?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Mason Jack, yes. Monzone?
Yes.
Novik?
Yes.
Pelletier? Yes. Callahan?
Good.
Right, so public comments, agenda items only. I assume you're here to report probably? and
Yes,
not
I
make
am.
any comments?
I am here to report. I know it has been ages,
It
but
has been a while since I've seen you. Hello. So nothing you wanna comment on?
no, but I appreciate you asking.
Okay. So the president's report, I don't have much to report. I can tell you that Eric and Carlotta and I went to the advocacy boot camp. They can maybe comment if you guys want to too. I found it I was expecting something different, I guess. I felt like it was something that had maybe been tailored more to directors and senior level staff that had then been, quickly modified perhaps for trustees.
Because they did market it specifically to.
Right.
trustees, so that's interesting.
The whole point of it was the suggestion that we go out and pretty much interview every stakeholder in the community. And as trustees, I'm not quite sure. And
Yeah.
people were trying to ask and like get a feel of how and I didn't feel like the answers were really clarified a lot. There were some interesting things. One thing I did take away from it though, one of the gentlemen who talked was at a library in Colorado where, trying to work with the community, they started a volunteer database through the library that was a place for anybody in the community who wanted to volunteer to put in like what their experience was, how they might be able to use that experience as a volunteer, and then organizations that were also looking for volunteers as a way to match up, and that, the library took that on as a project, and I thought that sounded neat. They called it cataloging the resources of the community. And then the other big thing was just that advocacy begins with listening. Was the other main point of that, going out and interviewing all the stakeholders in the community. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, but I think I was hoping for something different than what it turned out to be. So I don't know if you guys have anything you wanna add.
I agree with that. I mean, it was good if I worked here as an employee. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because I think you can really get a lot out and how to promote the library.
Like I said, it's interesting, because I
Would you like- no,
I would like
yeah,
to see
yeah,
it, so,
yeah.
just because it was marketed specifically for trustees,
Yeah.
so.
And based on the
It's
questions that
unfortunate that it
I was
wasn't
hearing in
quite
the
what
audience, I felt like, and the
You
woman
weren't
who was
the
sitting
only
next to
one
Carlotta and I,
listening.
there seemed to be some confusion as to
About
how
that.
exactly, as trustees, we would go about doing some of the things that were suggested,
Okay.
without stepping on the toes of the
Right.
director.
Right,
and-
right,
Yeah,
right.
a lot of the
Interesting.
programs were introduced, they're talking about reading programs and opening the library for later on with exams, things like, probably looking at directors. and-
Right, decisions that we would make and then bring before the board, unless they're just trying to, yeah, that's interesting, 'cause
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
So that's all I have for, in terms of a president report, so. So committee reports, finance, we can also find out about that donation too after Carlotta goes through
Okay.
the other numbers.
Does anybody have any questions on, start out with the cash statement? We're all looking at the same thing.
I just starred the donations in the thing, so that's the same issue, and then I guess I just wondered, online services, I'm guessing it's just upfront, heavy at the beginning of the year, as to how we've used so much already, that's what I think.
It's a
It's a
one-time,
one-time thing, yeah. So is the annual audit, if you will.
Yeah,
That's a one-time thing.
those were my questions. Anybody else?
Anybody have any other questions, checks?
I made an assumption that every month is approximately 16% of the year. I just divided it however you do. And some of the numbers, I only got as far as revenues because it always confuses me to look at revenues. So I let myself get confused, which I succeeded totally.
okay,
And for an example, grants, number 10, 3920, not grants, go up to photocopy, it's on
okay.
3800. It's 23, the percent of used, I'm assuming that's the percent of received.
Correct.
It's 23%.
Right.
So in other words, we've done better than would it be on the
If we
average.
divided it up by the number of months, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's my question. Now, the
Okay.
310 is the donation one,
Mhm.
and I just curious what that donation was.
So, after the last meeting, the amount of the donations was $601.50. So, yeah, so we've got another, the 2020 came from, I don't remember. But anyway, what the donations were that make up most of the donations, the primary part is, $500 were donated to us by William Meyer, M-A-Y-E-R. He actually makes an annual donation to us.
Okay.
So that was $500. We also received $100 at the beginning of the year to be used for, in use services for video games and gaming consoles. Someone donated $100 to us. And then we had an extra $1.50 in the cash register that we couldn't.
I'm all for those $1.50s.
So usually that's, people are buying like a Keurig cup or they're paying for photocopies and they don't want their change, that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
that extra,
yeah.
sometimes those extra funds go into donations.
understand.
So not for the $1.50, but for the 500 and the 100, do we send thank you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we send thank yous and I keep those on file and
Okay.
everything.
I
Yeah.
know, I've been a small,
You have to acknowledge it as a donation type of thing. don't
Pardon?
you? Don't you have to acknowledge that as a donation? Like a donation letter where it says under the federal.
Oh, yeah, for
Well,
like tax purposes.
I do not believe that donations to the library are tax deductible. I'll have to look that up, so do not
Yeah,
take
it's-
that.
It's
Okay.
possible that it's
Yeah.
It's
not.
possible that it's
Okay.
not, because we are not technically a 501c3 corporation.
you're
We are a
right.
government entity.
Okay, so,
So,
okay, that's good.
Yeah, so we acknowledge it through a thank you letter and that kind of thing, but in terms of a tax deductible donation, those are not to the library. Now, if the foundation was a 501c3, that kind of thing, it's.
Do you
that could
put a
have
sentence
potential.
on the bottom of that letter, the famous sentence, as because we are a not-for-profit organization's donation is not deductible? Or some such sentence? Because you have to do that with a 501c3.
Right, well, we're not a 501c3.
Which I understand, I went
yeah.
through this with
Yeah.
Deborah.
I mean, we're not
actually.
required to do that by law. For just donations to the
Okay.
library, we're not required to
Yeah, that's
say
what
that.
I didn't know.
But again, you know, should we establish some kind of 501c3, the library would not itself be one, because the library is considered a governmental
Exactly
organization.
what it is, okay.
So,
This donor, he gives every year?
yeah, he usually gives every year, or every other year at least. I know we've received other donations by him, from him, and it's usually in that amount, so.
The small donation I made when, I can't remember his name now, died, Art. That would be part of probably last year, because it was
Right,
last year.
right.
That's why I'm not seeing it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that was in
So
last
that
year.
being the case, it's not tax deductible to him, is that what you're saying?
Correct. That's not a tax, I mean, they can choose, people can choose to donate money to us whenever they want, and we can accept those donations, but it's not
Well,
considered
I
a
would-
tax deductible donation.
If I would win $1 billion in the
Right.
lottery, I'd probably show at least 10 cents.
Right.
Suppose a patient donates 100,000, so it's still not a
A larger donation of that magnitude, we would probably get attorneys involved and that sort of thing, so, but even at that point, it's not considered a tax deductible donation, I do not believe, unless the library had a foundation and the foundation itself was tax
Oh, so it has
You have to
be-
list donors over 500, I believe it is.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to look into.
I know for
whatever the laws are about
501c3 it's 500, I don't know. I know libraries were similar, but like you said, they're under government.
Yeah, because a library is similar in that it's a nonprofit. We're not in here, we're not doing this to make money, but
But it's not
it's
a
pretty much
charity.
in terms of
You know this by
legal.
your salaries. if
Yeah,
you're
I
not
mean, in
giving
terms
them
of like
money.
the legalities of things, we're really very different from a
Oh,
not,
okay.
we're a not-for-profit. I mean, we're really a government, yeah, yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah, we're not,
So even that
Not making
$500 identification may not be necessary.
right, that can be a completely different.
The lawyer would
Thing
have
for
to
them.
come up with
Yeah,
an
I mean,
answer.
anything of that magnitude, we would certainly get the attorneys involved in. And, you know, usually for libraries, when there's donations of that size,
They're building the building.
they're building related, you know, name a building after you, a room, that kind of thing, so.
If you
you
have,
know,
if you have a big donor, then you will be required to go put the foundation.
What foundation?
It's a foundation.
We could make it a foundation, right?
Anything else with the income statement?
I'll make a motion to approve the February
Wait,
financial.
we're not done.
I'm not done. The check register.
Oh, sorry.
Check register.
Does anybody have any questions on that?
What is, excuse my ignorance, but what is Midwest Mechanical and do, I'm sure I forgot.
That's all the HVAC,
H,
the HVAC units.
because there's about 10 payments to them,
Yeah,
they're all too
yeah.
big.
They're out here a lot, both, they do general maintenance, but also, they were the ones that replaced the HVAC unit that had to be replaced, they come out, if, you know, anything goes wrong
So
with any of the
that's what it
units.
is.
The Baxter room heat
Okay.
went out, last week, so they had to come out to work on that, and
Gotcha.
so.
What about travelers? This is the first time I see this entity in here.
I'm sorry,
Travelers?
travel for
2150.
1,700?
Yes.
They are our insurance, one of the insurance
Yeah.
companies that we use for our, crime, it has a specific name, it's for one of the policies, it covers, it's sitting on my desk.
Okay.
It covers, but it's one of the insurance policies
It's
that we
an
actually
insurance.
get it through. Mhm.
Okay, it's insurance.
Yeah, so, yeah. And you'll see it once a year, because we pay that just once a year
Oh,
for that. And then there's, we work with the broker to provide us with our building insurance, our criminal coverage, directors and officers insurance, that kind of thing.
On check number 2099, the GNL contractor, or I think it's contractor, for $1,390. That is for the snow removal. I talked to somebody from the Park District Board and asked him who does their, this is for the whole year, this 1,300.
Okay.
And that's just the parking lots, that's it. And I asked him who does their snow plowing.
Yeah.
Well, it's the Park District, they have their own trucks.
Okay.
And he said, I said, because we have to hire out. And he goes, well, if you want, why don't you have your director? And this is my question. Is the board want to have Pam talk to Jeff and Ralph, Jeff from the Park District, Ralph from the village, to see if we can have either the Park District or the village do the plowing, pay them, or, you do this for me, we'll do that for you. I don't know what we can do for them, but, whatever. But
Bedtime stories.
where it would be a little bit cheaper, because I mean, we didn't have a lot of snow this year.
Right.
And they charge from 1 to 3 inches, it's so much.
Yeah.
And then from 4 to whatever, it's so much. And if they come out twice in a day, it's so,
Yeah. I mean, if it's a possibility to
I
bring
feel
the
like it might
price
be
down.
more possible with the village rather than the Park District.
Seems they should all be involved with the same people, you get a better price.
Well, that's what I'm
no,
saying.
I
You
know what
ask
you're
both.
Well,
I mean,
the Park District has their own trucks, so they
They
do their stuff.
They do their stuff.
They do theirs.
But he did say that in the summer months, there are parts in this village that belongs to the Park District, but the village does it, because it's better for them to do it, or vice versa, I can't remember how he said it. So things like that, where, they help out each other out.
So no, the difference between, and I was talking to Carlotta briefly about this during the Finance Committee meeting, and I do believe that one time the village did plow for us, and I believe that they ended that either right before I came here the first time or shortly afterwards. That they had been plowing for us and that they were no longer interested in doing that. Now, that was a few years back.
Okay.
I think there's slightly different boards, certainly slightly different, a different administration, different village administrators, so it can't hurt to ask. I would reach out to Jeff at the Park District as well, because probably what the Park District and the village are doing with these shared spaces
Right.
or shared care of some of these spaces is they probably have an intergovernmental agreement, which is easier for them to put in place because the Park District is a district. And it's a completely separate taxing entity from the village. We are not a completely separate taxing entity from the village, so I don't know that an intergovernmental agreement is the appropriate mechanism for making those agreements, but I'll talk to them. We can figure out what that is, if it's just a handshake saying, yes, the village is gonna do this or whatever. But I'm certainly willing to talk to them to find out what they may or may not charge us and if that's something that they would consider doing it.
And have you started, because I think you had said when we met in the facilities committee that you were going to look into landscaping and it would probably be through the people who do the snow removal, which obviously the village and
We
the
have
Park
not started
District
looking
couldn't
into
do.
that
Okay.
yet, so,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean,
I don't know if it
approach
opens
them.
up more options for the landscaping and maybe you could get a better price if you were, or maybe it's better to do everything.
Yeah, and I don't know,
I
I would assume at some point that the village also has that Public Works has some staff that do some of that landscaping, or
Oh,
they
yeah.
may contract out for some of the more decorative stuff as well,
Yeah.
so I'll just have to find out, but,
Okay.
I can talk about
Yeah,
that with them as well, but certainly the snow removal is an easy piece of that I can ask about.
Does this include the church lot?
No.
No.
The church is in charge.
It shouldn't.
Yeah.
No,
I know, I'm
the
already
church
paying
lot,
for
the
it. That's what
church
I was
plows
wondering.
their lot, and that, whatever the agreement they have with whoever they do, whoever does it, but that's part of what we pay them the lease.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure
Mhm.
that it's,
They don't do a great job, but they contract out with, I don't know if it's the same person or not, but they have their
It's
own
cheap as
contract.
possible, obviously.
They have their own contract, that does not include the church. So Barbara is, basically asking for, like I said, so I'm looking at Barbara. If I have the board's approval, I'm certainly willing to,
Sure.
to approach them,
Yeah,
so.
Motion.
So that was it.
Okay,
I need-
if everybody's in agreement to have her speak, and it doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt, right? No, sure. Well, now I will make a motion to approve the February financial reports. One second. Callahan?
Sure.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Mason?
Yes.
Yes. Monzone?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Public here. Yes. Facilities, we had met, in January, but not in February, so nothing new there. Unless you have, I mean, the week from that, area you'd emailed us about it. I don't know
Yeah,
if you have anything else
so,
to-
the leak that was coming in through the bay window, was not coming through the window, it was coming in through the wood around the bay window, which was coming from the roof. I did email everyone, when that first happened. Luckily, Frontier, who was the general contractor, during the building renovation, we contacted them thinking that we weren't sure how many different things that might potentially involve, you know, if it was a roof, if it was a window, if it was, you know, siding, whatever, or the brickwork or masonry. So they came out right away, or actually they contacted Waukegan Roofing, who did the flat roof during the renovation, and they came out right away, gave us a quote. Dave and I were kind of holding our breaths, thinking that it was going to be, you know, not having any idea what it was entailed. And the quote was just around $2,500, $2,600. And they came out on the first nice day last week, got that all done, and as I said in my emails,
Could have been a lot worse.
it could have been a lot worse. They fixed the flanging, there's an ice and water guard there now, they've attached some things that weren't attached before. So hopefully that's, we won't have any other issues with that. Like I said, look, and it's just that one little roof that was over the curved window that's facing south in the magazine room. So we started repairing the drywall on that because it is curved. Dave had to do a little bit of research on how to work with, you know, how to do that. And then we'll be repainting that window and putting the blinds back up. But yeah, that was, that turned out to be a lot less expensive than we thought, so that was a really nice thing for a change.
But they didn't realize what he was getting into when he started working there.
Probably not, it's an interesting building.
No, there were no policies in here, right?
No, the only
The
policy that
interlibrary
we're talking about is
loan,
just
that's
potentially
in the
changing the interlibrary loan, but
Okay.
in terms of
Right.
the actual policy review, I just put this in here just as a reminder to the policy
next
committee.
meeting.
And I'll be sending out those policies to review in the next few weeks.
So this staff reports?
So in addition to my written report, you did have at each of your spaces the statistical report, which was not complete last week, because I did have to.
Can we go back to facilities? There was a question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to look at three different pieces of paper. The question was about the lights on, shining across the street.
Oh, yeah, that was one of
That
the
was your
things in the minutes.
So I believe the question was whether or not they stay on all night?
Yeah.
Yes.
And the short answer is yes.
Okay.
So,
Is that for security reasons?
yes. So,
Our
We had
neighbors don't
heard
like
that
us.
maybe people were complaining, not necessarily to the library, but about the library, so I was just curious if they were,
about the lights, I think,
yeah,
right?
they're shining into homes, I guess. I think we heard that via word of mouth, is that correct? Nobody's actually complained to the
No,
library?
this person would, yeah.
Okay,
Like, he hasn't said anything like since the last time I saw him.
okay.
And
I
no
mean,
one has said
unless
anything
somebody
to the-
complains directly to the library,
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
for
right,
security
You know,
purposes.
And, you know, at that point, I mean, right now, they're on dimmer switches and timers, so, you know, some of them are on one, some of them are on the other. But, you know, I guess we could put them on timers if we wanted, but there is some, you know, I mean, we installed the bright lights in response to patron and board concerns
concern,
about
yeah.
the darkness of the building
Yeah.
at night, and so, I mean,
Yeah, make everybody happy.
No?
yeah, so I mean,
Okay,
and I know that I've heard much more positive comments.
Yeah.
And I've not heard any complaints till this last one came up.
and I was just curious, I didn't know if they went off like at 10 o'clock or if they were on
Yeah,
all
they
night.
stay on all night.
Okay. You were talking
Now you
about.
can go ahead.
Okay.
I ran out of things.
So, the statistical report is,
Updated.
updated, yes. You will notice a couple of things. Okay, I don't know how to format Excel. If you look at the database statistics, they have dropped quite a bit through, not a significant drop off in the usage, but Ancestry.com has retroactively changed how they record statistics. So in the past, it appears that they, at least what they have told us, is that the way that they were counting, they were duplicating statistics. So they were essentially doubling their statistics. So now they've fixed whatever that issue was for their statistical reporting. So that number is significantly lower. And then Press Reader is one of our online newspaper databases, newspapers from all over the world. And it doesn't actually count. We thought that the clicks meant articles read, but it does not. So we've changed the way that we're counting, pulling out their statistics, and that's going to be issues read. We don't break the databases out in this report, but you will notice a significant drop off from last month to this month in terms of those statistics. So going forward, this should be much more accurate. The other thing that is new on the statistical report is on the last page, I've started including this month all of our social media, both postings, usage, views, that kind of thing, so that you guys can get a sense of what the librarians are doing, in social media and how people are responding to us on social media. And I believe those were the only two things I wanted to add to my.
They're like baseball, all these statistics.
Well, I'm just wondering, is there an easy way for them to keep track, or are they just keeping like sticky notes and hashtags? on
There's,
there?
for a lot of the social media,
I guess you
for the
could go
social
and
media, they do track it, and there's a
through
way, because we sign up as an organization, and there's
Okay.
some tracking mechanisms
For that.
that, yeah.
Okay. I was just thinking if I was in charge of keeping track of it,
Yeah.
I'd probably
I mean, the
forget
only
all
one that
time.
would be, I mean, it's not onerous at this point, but
Okay.
there are tracking
That's
mechanisms
interesting.
within each of the social media.
I had a question, I don't know, under the Tech Services Department report, the discussion of determining the feasibility of moving the picture book collection to genre-based face-up shelving.
Right.
I'm just wondering how the space would allow for that.
We're exploring different options. Courtney, the head of youth services and Helga, the head of technical services, have made, they've been doing field trips in the past couple of
Okay.
days, going to area libraries that had responded to an email that Courtney had sent out about, did you do face-out shelving for your, or like bins for board books and that kind of thing. So they've been going to different libraries that do that. We are looking at, space would certainly be impacted with
Yeah.
that. And so we would do kind of a combination of things. So I mean,
Okay.
we would have to make some decisions about space and shelving and some
Yeah.
of those kinds of things. But this is something that Courtney has implemented in another library she's been in. It's been very successful,
Okay.
especially with board books. It's very, very successful. And just kind of anecdotally, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but when she implemented this at Displays, their board book circulation went up a third to a half.
Okay.
So, as we look at, wanting to make sure that people are continuing to use our collections, one of the best ways, Stephanie, as you know, I'm sure, is just to make those things visible.
Right.
And the best way to do that is face out
Yeah.
of any kind. And so if we can do that, makes a lot of sense with board books, because kids are down there and they're not keeping track of really, they just want to know that here's all the A's, or here's the dream books, or that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So, but we will be having to look at some spacing issues along with that.
Okay.
Anything else with my report, or the reports from the department heads? Okay, that's all I have.
The family engineering nights are very nice. keeping them both and planning to come to the third one, so. Jess is good at that.
She's super good. She's done a couple programs on it too, and just the comments back from other libraries that incorporate some of the things that she says in the programs are like, you've changed the way that we do, math programming,
Yeah.
and so it's very nice.
It's impressive. Corporate council, I don't believe we have anything, so we move to unfinished business, starting with, the building across the street.
So, I did send an email, the last email from last Friday, unfortunately, what looked like a viable, potential buyer, that fell through, because of some zoning things. There is another showing tomorrow, to someone who may potentially want to purchase the building and then use it to, rent out for retail. So we're waiting to hear back how that goes.
She gonna sell donuts?
Ice cream, I think is what they're talking about, so, I know that the board is frustrated, but I would recommend at this point that, not to be discouraged, and that, like I said, let's see what happens tomorrow. I'm gonna be reaching out to Ralph, and finding out, if the village is still moving forward with, working with a consultant, looking at the zoning and finding out if there's meetings and how we can be more involved with that, just so that we can have more of a say. And, again, just reminding the board that, we've dropped the price just one time. I think we'll be able to sell the building. It's just gonna be a matter of time and finding the right candidate. I had mentioned, to someone, I can't remember who, but, I've actually been really pleasantly surprised with the number of showings that we have had lately. So, fingers crossed that the interest continues to be there. As frustrated as our broker was, after, this latest buyer, or potential buyer saying, that he was no longer interested, he did say that it gave him a couple of other ideas to work with. So he's still working very hard for us, and, like I said, I think that it's just a matter of.
Who's the woman at the village
that
you mentioned in the email?
Nancy Radzovich?
Yeah.
She is the director, I'm gonna butcher her title, I'm sure, the director of Commerce and Economic Development for the village. She's actually a village employee.
And she has a say on who sells what and what they sell.
She doesn't have the say, so, what the limiting, or what is kind of guiding people here is the zoning. Or the zoning of the area had changed from the original, when the building was originally built. It was allowed offices, small warehousing or factory space based on what was there, that kind of thing. In 2014, and I don't remember the exact month, that zoning had been changed to what the zoning is currently, that they're really wanting kind of a residential retail, more walkable, that kind of thing is what they're going for. So that's really what's guiding this. And then Nancy herself, and even the village itself, and I'll take this back because I'm not entirely sure about this, but Nancy herself cannot say to something, or Dominic, who is the zoning administrator, he's the one that people first runs these things by, he can't look at something and say, this is fine, I'm gonna let you ignore all the current zoning laws and build something there, or put, I'm gonna let you put a factory there, or I'm gonna let you put, I don't know, a massage parlor there, whatever the case may be. I mean, he can't just make those unilaterally on his own. Nancy is in charge of trying to kind of just develop the economic, base of Morton Grove. That overall is her position. I mean, what she does specifically day to day, I don't know. You'd have to talk to the village, but.
So, if my understanding is correct, they're trying to maximize tax rates, so they're trying, that's why they keep focusing on retail. They got a plan for the entire.
Right, they do. I mean, right now, this is a TIF district, and so they do have a development plan, and so that's what they're really working towards. One could argue how successful that may or may not be, but they're not just doing this willy-nilly. They've developed this plan based on input from someone. I don't know who that is. My concern right now is that the library have a seat at the table a little bit more than we have, because I think that maybe our voice isn't being heard as much as it should be. So I'm going to be reaching out to Ralph to figure out, how we can move forward and make that happen without developing any kind of contentious relationship with the village.
If they, you said they can't decide to allow, but they also can't. You don't have to decide. We don't allow you to the donut shop and the ice cream shop. They can't say it's got to be that.
No, they cannot determine that something has to be that, as long as, you know,
It's
that
within the zoning
whatever that
rules.
meets their definition for that area, yeah, it could be socks, it could be ice cream, it could be, you know, whatever, so.
Just after all these years of not being able to fill in the lands that they own, and
Yeah,
to make it more difficult seems,
right. And I, you know, I mean, I get it, that, you know, zoning was created for a reason, so you don't have a factory next to someone's house and, you know, that kind of thing,
yeah,
and,
I'm
you
not
know.
arguing, but
so-
we haven't offered them a factory, we've offered them clean
Pam,
businesses.
Pam said she's gonna, cause they had been working with a consultant to discuss possible changes, and we're not sure where that is right now,
Right.
so that was specifically what Pam was gonna see, and
Yeah.
maybe
I think that's the first step, to
Um,
see if they're still continuing that
we
process,
could perhaps,
be a little bit more involved,
Yeah.
or share some of our concerns about that.
and what we'd like to do with the money once the building sells, and how that improves the life of the community as
I
well.
mean, because right now, it's not doing any of us any good, you know, it's not bringing in tax dollars for the village, it's not, it's sitting empty for us, I mean, we've even cleaned it out, so I mean, it's not even serving as storage, because most of what was in there, you know, we need to just go away anyway, so.
There's a lot of
Is Frank aware of what's
thief
been
area
running?
in this area that needed to be acted on, and nothing has been happening over the last several years.
Right.
Look at that old grocery place in there. Place is dead. What can the village do?
In the case of that, not much, it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing for Dominic's, I mean, that's not even the village, that's the owner and
The
I mean,
more,
that's-
the more visible area is always gonna be Dempster.
Mhm.
And it doesn't even make sense to put visible type of
Well,
cutesy things.
Go to the train station right there.
Oh,
Well,
that's a
Burt's is
cute
that, I
thing.
could see people, you know, going from Burt's to get ice cream.
I mean, you know, I mean, they have a plan, obviously, in their heads of what they want, you know, the area
No,
to be.
I do
you
too,
know.
what I would
you know,
like to have, but.
How successful that is, you know, there's so many factors that play into that, so, so again, I think that it's easy to get discouraged, but on the other hand, I don't think that we should be that discouraged, because, you know, we still have some wiggle room with the price, that's still pretty much money in our pockets that we can use to develop, you know, either use services here or whatever we choose to do with that money when those funds come in. And like I said, I continue to be somewhat surprised by the level of interest in the property, so as long as that continues,
Has
I
Frank
think that.
been kept up to date?
He hasn't, there hasn't been a reason to, so you know, I can certainly fill him in, but there's no reason to. I think that at this point, you know, I'm happy to do that, but I don't think that at this point, there's no reason to,
Okay.
so.
The tax base on this village is getting smaller and smaller. And
Right, I mean, your goal is always to attract more businesses, because then it lessens some of the tax burden on your residents, but, you know.
Well, all we can do is continue to keep our
Yeah,
fingers
so like I said,
crossed.
I will, Brian is very good about, sending me, showing reports after the showing, so if I don't hear from him by tomorrow afternoon, usually he would send me something over the weekend or by Monday, and I'll share that with you guys when I hear.
And we haven't met him, but I mean, it seems like he really is
Yeah,
doing,
yeah, I mean, and he's happy to come in
working
and talk
hard.
to the board at any time too, if you do wanna,
Okay.
ever meet him or have him come in and discuss further
but
options.
I mean, at this point, I don't think there's any reason, if he wants to keep on keeping on.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what he's doing.
Okay.
For punishment, in other words.
Yeah. So the bylaw revisions, we can table,
Well, the bylaw revisions you received.
right, it's in the
So,
last month.
There's really not, basically, as per the bylaws as they're written, you needed to see them 10 days before voting on them. So you received them at the February meeting. So hopefully you had a chance to review them. If not, we can go through them. These were suggested revisions based on the meeting of the ad hoc bylaws committee. And I made those changes as per their instructions or things that we discussed at the
Do we need to motion to approve and second before we start discussing them, or can we discuss them and then decide if we're,
You
this
can,
is where I get tripped up.
I would say that you need to make a motion.
Okay, that's what I thought, but, okay, I'll motion to approve, the changes to the bylaw revisions.
I will second it.
Barb is the bylaw guru of the
I
group,
honestly
and you were at the
don't, I don't
meeting.
remember a thing.
Okay, I mean, when I read through it, it was
I'm
like
not even
everything
sure I hit get my copy.
we had talked about, so I didn't have any.
How much you wrote on here?
And Joanne,
No.
did you? Did I?
Nice.
Yeah.
So I tried to do a couple of things, clarify areas that were maybe potentially confusing. Probably one of the biggest ones is I took out the standing rule,
The number or the way
right,
we ordered
just
it.
because standing rules are often procedural based, and those things will still be in your bylaw binder, but they don't necessarily have to be part of your binder or of the bylaws themselves, so I removed those as well.
I think we were looking for a term when we came up with standing, we were looking for a terminology that would be appropriate for.
Yeah, I mean, and the advantage too now, if the board does approve this, is that you can change whatever you wanna call the standing rules to, if you want to call them procedures or whatever, you can do that at this point without having to then go back and review, or revise the bylaws and then approve them again, because those are more procedural.
Yeah, because they're useful, we're just gonna use them a different way.
Right, and just removing the mention of them in the actual
Right.
bylaws means that every time, for example, the standing rule A becomes the director review instead of orientation, by including that in the bylaws, you would have had to change that again, so. I think those were the major things. There had been substantive work done on these within the last few years,
The
so this
last
was
time,
more, this was more just kind of a reread and a quick revision.
Yeah, there wasn't that much change.
Right.
We've gone over them several times since I'm on board.
Yeah, this was my second time doing it.
And if I stop reading them for some reason, you'll understand why.
I believe we did that in response to a request from one of the board members, it might have been
Probably
you,
you.
so.
Just because
Just because it was
timing.
time,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, there wasn't any.
Well, there-
and going forward, the board might not change anything in the next
Yeah.
several years, but they look at,
Right.
it says the
I
bylaws,
think
we
it's
look at them
every 2
every 20
years, we're
years.
supposed to
Yeah.
do a review of the two.
So is everybody comfortable voting to approve these?
I am.
Alright. We'll roll call them.
Motion to approve.
Thank you for doing it in red and
Oh, no problem.
and highlighted, because it's the only way to know.
I'll second. Oh, yeah, we did,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, sorry.
Yes. Novak,
Yes.
Pelletier.
Yes.
Callahan,
Yes.
Gonzalez.
Yes.
Gray,
Yes.
Mason Jack, yes, Monzo.
Yes.
So what will happen is, I will bring, revised hard copies without the track changes on them to the next month's board meeting for your findings.
The date of the volunteer appreciation,
Here, this is all the.
Pam had included the email for. I'll just, since I started talking, I'll tell you,
With the old one.
I could do the
Yeah.
Friday, but not the Saturday,
Okay.
personally.
I'm
And she preferred the Friday. too.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
did she say that?
Yeah.
I can do the.
Yeah, I could do the Friday.
So the volunteers really like to see I'm gonna be there as well, but anyone that wants to come, I can let Emily know that Friday works better for most of the board, and then.
Oh, it does at the top, I was just,
Yeah.
I missed that.
And then, so I will let her know that Friday, and then she can go ahead and start planning that, and then I'll let her know more information once I know it.
Okay. Do you do any sort of, staff appreciation?
We do staff appreciation, we just usually do that during our staff in-service. So for example, on Friday, at our staff in-service, we have a staff recognition section where, and it's kind of spelled out in our procedurals, kind of organizational procedures. At 1 year, employees get a certificate, thanking them for their service, and then at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, they get a certificate, and then a small token of our appreciation, usually a gift card, small gift card, and then going up depending on the number of years. So we try to do that at our staff in service.
Okay. So kind of throughout.
When is this again?
April.
This is
Friday, April 20th.
This is for the volunteer
appreciation.
appreciation.
April 20th.
April, whatever that Friday is.
20th.
20th.
20th. Okay.
And while we're thinking about dates, a date of the annual long-range planning meeting. And then so,
I know this came up.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know the board indicated that they wanted to do this at some point.
Right.
And I still wasn't, I mean, if you wanted to do it as part of a regular meeting, if you wanted to hold a
I
separate
think
meeting.
what we did last time, because it would be whatever the majority rules, I think last time we decided, I think we met at 5 and had pizza before the 7 o'clock board meeting.
Yeah, that.
As opposed to having a separate, date, but if people prefer not being here 3 hours, 3.5 hours, depending upon how long the board meeting it was tied to, we could look at that too. So I don't know if anybody.
What month are you thinking?
We don't have a month, I know it just came up that, maybe to just have kind of
Well, I know Emily can't come to the
May
May meeting, so I don't know if,
The April meeting is a week later than it normally is, and
okay.
depending on
Was
what.
that on that is, we did vote on
We
that.
did vote
Sure.
on that, and that's changed on everything, so, but depending on if the board wanted anything prepared, I'm gone the previous week to that, which
Okay.
is why I had
So
to
maybe
move it.
June?
So, I mean, June is fine with me,
I'm in June with me.
if that,
So that would be June 14th. As a possible.
and does everyone like the idea? I like the idea of myself of coming
Yeah,
up
I
by,
mean,
if everyone else likes that, just because I think it's already a day
To
that's.
check if Jim was working, so he'll be with my kids.
Yeah, I mean, it shows for me that Bill's probably gonna be out of town then, but I can get a babysitter if it works for everybody as opposed to pushing it
Yeah,
to
that's
July.
true. That's fine.
So should we tentatively plan on June, what did you say, 14th?
June 14th, yeah.
I should remember that's my anniversary.
Do you mind?
No.
Okay.
Want to have dinner with us on your anniversary?
Totally fine. That's how I stayed married this long. I usually don't spend my anniversary with my husband.
We'll bring you flowers or something.
Maybe.
Yeah. So we'll tentatively plan for June 14th at 5 PM and get either sandwiches or pizza or something like that.
Okay.
And then I would
Better
recommend to the
email
board if
myself.
over the next, couple months, as things occur to you, I'll try to put together an agenda too, if there's specific things that you think of that you wanted to make sure that we get discussed, just let me know that.
Okay, so new business.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Do we have to notice that up just because it's, being an entire board discussion library?
I'm sorry?
We have to, is that something that's gonna be formalized, we gotta notice the entire
Open meetings.
Thank you.
Yes, it will be posted, and I'll post that time change and everything. But actually what that will be is a special meeting of the board, and it will be, so you'll go into this will be a separate special
There'll be
meeting.
2 meetings that
Yeah, you'll have
that
2
we'll
meetings,
to-
basically, you'll have this meeting and then the regular board meeting. Yeah, but I'll post that when, where it needs to be posted, yes.
Any other questions before we move to new business? All right, the interlibrary loan policy, which Pam provided, our current policy, the letter that, Pam drafted and I signed to the patron who, was unhappy with it as it is. Pam spoke with him on the telephone and he and I played phone tag and left each other, a couple very long voicemails last month.
What was his specific concerns?
He wants to be able to keep books that come from other libraries longer than our current policy allows.
So, and the reason that we're looking at it right
Crux
now
of it.
is where we ended up, is that we had slightly different interpretations of the way the current policy reads. That right now, our current policy states that renewals are, we will allow 1 renewal, but later on in the policy, or later on in that same bullet point, it says renewals are at the sole discretion of the loaning library and cannot be guaranteed. He reads that as that we should request a renewal from the loaning library as many times as he wants us to, whether or not, and then it's up to that library to determine whether or not they'll renew it. And I tried to emphasize with him that, our policy is 1 renewal, and he says, but no, he says, your policy then states it's up to the loaning library. So we had, some discussions about the interpretation of that particular, bullet point, was really where we kind of ended up.
I think we should send it to a speed reading.
So, as Stephanie said, I had spoken with him a couple of times. And,
Right.
I think at this point it's more principle for him, but, so I had actually been in correspondence with him and had spoken with him on the phone a couple of different times, emphasizing again that our renewal policy really is one renewal. You know, that renewals are at the sole discretion of the library. So, I did, when he reached out to Stephanie, he wanted some clarification on the policy. She pretty much backed up what I had said, and then, as per what I told him that we would do, and to, you know, prevent this kind of confusion in the future, we may want to reword our current interlibrary loan policy if the board feels that they should. This is the first time this has ever come up, I will tell you that.
Sure.
So I'm also a big proponent of not making policy for the exception, so just to keep that in mind. But then in response to that, Stephanie also asked me to find out what other libraries did, how many renewals they allowed, and so that's what the interlibrary loan renewal policies at area library sheet is.
Theoretically, if the policy of limited renewals, that always come up, and it doesn't really open up for somebody to go up for.
It depends on the loaning library. Most libraries will not allow unlimited
Oh,
renewal.
not unlimited, I thought the policy we were discussing at the end of the year last year about changing renewal policy over here.
So that's automatic renewals.
Automatic
And those
Yeah,
are for
and-
our materials.
Right, those would be for our materials, and automatic renewals would still follow our current loan policies. So for right now, if you as our patron checks out a book, you're allowed 2 renewals. So automatic renewals would just automatically do those unless there was a hold on that, so it's a separate from
There's
this.
no loophole or, you know,
Yeah.
automatic renewals, that can just, you know.
Mhm.
No, I think the biggest issue is it's a matter of staff time and work, like if you have to have a staff member following up.
Yeah, it can be confusing, and the other thing too is that, you know, other libraries sending us their materials is really, that's a courtesy. And so we work hard, as most libraries do, work hard not to take advantage of that. And so that's, you know, a couple of the reasons that most libraries will impose some type of ILL limit, renewal limit, just because we don't want to keep asking the library. You know, they might not have an item, that item might not have a hold, but on the other hand, if I keep saying, well, my patron wants to renew it, that means that item isn't on the shelf for their patrons. So we try to be cognizant of that and, you know, kind of balance those things out, because we would want those libraries to be cognizant of those things for us as well. So,
So I wasn't suggesting we changed it, I
Right.
just thought it would be good for
Yeah,
us as a frame
absolutely.
of reference to see.
So we are in the majority. Most libraries, of the 37 that responded to me when I sent out the question, allow 1 renewal, just as we do. And then the next is obviously is 2, and then,
I was surprised
Or, I'm
that there
sorry,
was
10.
a library that even let them do it 3 times.
Yeah. And then there are some libraries that do allow renewals based solely on whatever the loaning library says.
I would assume there's bigger libraries.
I was just gonna say that.
No, not necessarily. So it just depends. Actually, in some of that, they might be some of the, I don't wanna say smaller libraries. It is a significant staff time to process a renewal, particularly for interlibrary loans.
You have to come in and renew it.
They can call.
Or they can
So
come
for an
in.
interlibrary loan item, they can call or they can come in. Because we don't have a shared catalog, it can't easily be done, so there's, not only does it have to be renewed in our database, our regular patron database, but then it has to be renewed on OCLC, so that means we have to log in there, and so then there's paperwork that's associated with that as well. So it's not just as simple as someone coming in and renewing an item that we own, you know, you as our patron, I mean, that's pretty super easy. There's some additional steps that are involved.
Because
with
we're
this.
small, we're more dependent on the interloan, I would think.
Well, we don't get as many interlibrary loans as you would think. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of patrons are aware of it as much as we would like, so, but yeah, I mean, right now, we have a staff person that's, you know, full-time that processes the interlibrary loans, so, so really, I mean, staff is a big reason, and then also making sure that we're, respectful of other libraries' materials and their willingness to continue to loan us things, so, You know, I,
Does anybody feel that we should be moving to change it as is, as opposed to just changing the wording to
Be more clear?
make it more clear for any possible future confusion?
Check out shorter books.
Do you want to suggest,
It's
do you want us to try and change it, the wording here right now, or do you wanna?
I mean, and we're also, the policy's meeting.
the policy committee is meeting, so
Okay.
if you want to make a
Yeah,
change.
that probably
I mean,
makes
if nothing
sense.
else, what I can do is, what I'd probably do is use some of the terminology that I used in the letter when I was drafting the letter to
Right.
him.
Did you already send this?
This was already sent to him, so.
And he never, I really honestly expected to hear back, I was surprised that I didn't, so I don't.
Oh, you did not?
No, I didn't.
I was gonna ask
Hear
that,
back
you already
after.
sent it, what was his response?
Unless he had called the mayor, because that, he did threaten that a couple times. So, though I had explained to him that the mayor doesn't, that the person that he would need to talk to is Stephanie or the library
I'm trying
board,
to
so.
figure out where that address is, I
So.
just live right there. I thought it was 8600.
I don't even know what it was, I mean.
And this information, the name and address, that's not going out as
No,
part of the
this
board
did not,
packet.
this did not,
Right.
this is only in your packets, it did not go, it
Because
did
we
not
wanna
go into
protect
They're
the
not trying
privacy
to
of the
the
patron.
two buildings, the two big,
Yeah.
sections.
So we want to be respectful of his privacy as well. And he made some valid points that, obviously if he misinterpreted it, it's possible that other people
Yeah, I
are
think we
as
can
well.
tighten up the language and.
The decent person would say thank you for your efforts,
So,
but that's the decent.
I
person.
will draft suggested revisions, and that can be one of the policies that the policy committee then
I was told well. There's no pretty pictures this month.
This was a really nice letter though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nice letter,
The
yeah.
letter was very nice.
And as far as the FLR, the only thing I wanted to say, if that's okay, that I just jumped to that.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
Just that it was completed and it's filed, and if you wanna see it, here it is.
Good job.
Basically, this is all,
Maybe next.
this is actually it, it's not, this is all the preparation documentation, which is, in and of itself, kind of a pain. But this is the complete annual report that we're required to send to the state library, so that did get sent in on February 20th. It's due the 1st of March, so, I just wanted to let the board know and give anyone a chance that wanted to look at it, because it is so long, I didn't wanna make multiple copies for everyone, so.
It's very
Save some trees, and then the communication from the woman about the,
Exhibit.
and the, yeah.
Yeah, I was very pleased with it.
Yeah, it turned out really, really nice.
It was so great.
It was nicely
We got a
done.
lot of positive, feedback about it, and a lot of positive press.
Still no comments from the public?
I tried to send you,
well-
Do you have a
people that I
question?
know to it, but I don't know if they.
I will save my questions for later, but it occurred to me didn't want to make a comment. Happy International Women's Day to the majority of the board.
Thank you. We outnumber the men in here, so.
I said the majority of the board.
All right, and I don't think we have any reason to move into executive session.
No.
So I will make a motion to adjourn at 7:58, yes?
Very good, second.
We're adjourned.